Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. A while ago, I put a post on Facebook asking all of my tour guide friends, what is the dumbest thing you've had to tell people not to do on your tour? And the majority of the answers involved climbing things. Now, I mentioned a couple of videos ago about the girls that tried to climb construction equipment on my tour, and yes, there was just a cherry picker parked outside of one of the houses, and I parked us near it because it was an open space, and at that location, open space is prime real estate. And I look up at one point, and this drunk girl in a mini dress with heels on is clambering up the edge of the cherry picker, and I have to stop and be like, no, 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 bad, no climbing that. There's also a lovely occasion where my group was all gathering, and we were waiting for the tour to start, and I see there's a drunk guy being, a drunk guy over by the fence of Jackson Square, and eventually I notice he's climbing it, and that's never a good thing. Like, honestly, people climbing that fence are always intoxicated, but at one point he just falls over backwards, and I'm like, oh, Lord. And he's just lying on the ground, and so eventually I'm like, somebody's gonna have to go, like, check on him. And so I decide to go over there, and one of my guests decides to go with me because she's a registered nurse. And I'm like, thank God someone with more, training than me is going to deal with this. And I go over there, and he's lying on his back, just staring up at the air. And I'm like, hey, honey, you okay? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, you fell. Are you okay? Did you hit your head? And the guy's like, no, the ground hit me. I'm like, okay, sweetie. And there's a couple more back and forths while me and the nurse try to see if he's coherent and if he's acting this way because he's drunk or did he hit his head. And finally she leans in closer to me and says, I think he's okay. He's flipping off the sidewalk. And I look down, and sure enough, both of his hands are pressed up against the sidewalk with the middle finger extended. And it seems he heard us because he screamed, it hit me. I was like, okay, well, we're gonna head off. You have fun in New Orleans. And his response was, I'm from Hammond, which is not that far away from here. But I've also one night was watching a guy climb up that fence while I was trying my best to get my tour to go around the corner so I could start the story. And he was climbing this fence for the entertainment, as far as I could tell, of two little 10-year-old boys who were sitting there watching him. And his pants were falling down. He was trying to climb one of the side posts, and he got about halfway up and was slipping and was screaming at these little boys, hey, come help me, push me up a little bit. And that's when the mom noticed what was happening and came over and grabbed the boys and walked away. But yeah, I've also seen people try to climb the balcony posts a lot. If you're ever here during Mardi Gras, you'll see they're also often greased to prevent people from doing that. But especially considering there are these things called Romeo spikes on some of the balcony posts, and the story goes that they're there to prevent young men from climbing up into girls' bedrooms and doing naughty things. And when I tell that story on a tour, if there's a teenage boy around, I can guarantee you he's going to say, well, I can make it past that. And at least once, yes, I had a guy try to make it past that. I'm like, stop. Not one of my guests, but there was one night I was trying to do a story, and across the way there was a street musician playing fiddle for a guy who had set up a slack line between two of the posts and was just walking the slack line as if this was a circus. It was lovely. I loved it. But I've also had guests try to climb trees. A lot of guests try to climb the buildings. Usually just climbing up on the steps to sit down, and I have to be like, no, absolutely not. That one specifically has a sign that says, don't sit here, and also generally don't climb the exterior of a banister. It's not a safe way to get up on stairs. But, the good news is the majority of the French Quarter is flat, so you gotta try to find things to climb. Does that prevent people? Nope. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.